Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Steve Harvey. Now let me talk to you straight from the heart. When a man distances himself from you and starts ignoring you, the worst thing you can do is panic. See, panic makes you emotional. Emotional makes you react. And reaction without understanding will always cost you your power. When a man pulls back, most women lean forward. You start texting more, calling more, asking more questions, overthinking every little thing. But let me tell you something. When he steps back and you chase, you just confirm to him that you're more invested than he is. And in relationships, the person who is less afraid to walk away holds the power. So the first thing you do is this. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't over-explain. You pause. You breathe. You regain your emotional balance because your calmness will confuse him more than your tears ever could. Here's the second thing. You match his energy, but with class. I didn't say play games. I said match energy. If he takes 5 hours to reply, you don't respond in 30 seconds. If he becomes distant, you don't reward distance with more attention. You give him space. And let me explain something about man. When we pull away, sometimes we're testing freedom. We're testing how much space we can take without losing you. But when we realize you're not sitting there waiting, when we see you're still glowing, still living, still moving forward, that's when curiosity kicks in. A man values what he feels he might lose. Scarcity creates value. Over-availability kills mystery. When a man distances himself and starts ignoring you, the first thing you must control is your reaction, because your reaction will determine whether you keep your power or hand it over. The natural instinct for most women is to panic. Your mind starts racing. Did I say something wrong? Is he losing interest? Is there someone else? And once those thoughts begin, your emotions follow. You start checking your phone every 5 minutes. You reread old messages. You analyze his last text like it's a hidden code. And before you even realize it, anxiety has taken control. But let me explain something to you clearly. Panic is not attractive, and it is not powerful. Panic pushes people away. Calmness pulls clarity in. When you react emotionally, you begin doing things that lower your value without you even noticing. You double text. You send long paragraphs explaining how you feel. You ask questions he's not ready to answer. You try to force communication. And what happens? Now he feels pressure. And when a man feels pressure, his natural response is to create more space. So the very thing you fear, him pulling away, gets worse because your reaction intensified it. That's why the first move is not to chase, not to confront, not to demand answers. The first move is to pause. Pausing is power. When you pause, you give yourself time to think instead of react. You breathe. You step back. You allow your emotions to settle so you can see the situation clearly. Because sometimes distance is not about you. Sometimes a man is stressed. Sometimes he's overwhelmed. Sometimes he needs space to process his own thoughts. But you will never know the truth if you respond from fear instead of strength. A calm woman can observe. An emotional woman can only react. Now understand this. When you don't panic, you send a message without saying a word. Your silence says, I am secure. Your patience says, my world does not revolve around you. And confidence is magnetic. When a man sees that you are not spiraling, not begging, not losing control, it shifts the dynamic. He expected you to chase. He expected you to question. But instead, you remain steady. That steadiness creates curiosity. He starts wondering what you're thinking. He starts noticing that you're not as easily shaken as he thought. There is strength in emotional discipline. Emotional discipline means you feel everything, but you don't let everything control you. You may feel hurt. You may feel confused. That's human. But you don't act from that place. You sit with it. You process it privately. You talk to a trusted friend if you need to. but you don't make him the center of your emotional storm. Because the moment he realizes he can control your mood with his silence, you've given him leverage. And let me tell you something else. When you panic, you subconsciously communicate fear of loss. And fear of loss often pushes the very thing you're afraid of closer to reality. But when you stay calm, you communicate self-worth. You show that you value yourself enough not to overextend for someone who is temporarily unavailable. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself too. Calmness also protects your dignity. Once you send 10 unanswered messages, once you cry on the phone asking why he's distant, you can't take that back. Dignity, once cracked, is hard to fully restore. But when you handle distance with grace, you maintain control of how you are perceived. You stay centered. You stay grounded. And whether he comes back with explanation or continues drifting away, you remain intact. So the first key is simple but powerful. Don't panic. Control your emotions before they control you. Because in relationships, the person who can stay calm in uncertainty is the person who holds the strength. And strength, quiet, steady strength, is something no man ignores for long. The second thing you must do when a man distances himself is match his energy, but do it with class, not ego. There's a difference between playing games and protecting your value. Playing games is manipulative. Protecting your value is strategic. When he pulls back and you keep giving more, you create imbalance. Relationships only work when energy flows both ways. The moment you start overcompensating for his distance, you teach him that he can give less while still receiving more. See, a lot of women think love means proving loyalty through persistence. You believe if you just show him how consistent you are, how available you are, how understanding you are, he'll appreciate you more. But let me explain something about man. We respect what requires effort. We value what isn't easily accessible. If he takes hours to respond and you reply in seconds every single time, you're sending the message that no matter what he does, your availability stays the same. That removes urgency. And when there's no urgency, there's no motivation to step up. Matching energy means you stop overextending. If he slows down communication, you slow down too. If he becomes less available, you become less available. Not to punish him, not to get revenge, but to restore balance. Because balance creates clarity. When you match his effort, he has to feel the difference. He has to experience what reduced access feels like. And sometimes that feeling is what wakes a man up. Now let's be clear. Matching energy does not mean becoming cold or disrespectful. You're not ignoring him to hurt him. You're simply adjusting your investment to match his. That's maturity. That's emotional intelligence. If he texts, you respond, but you don't drop everything. If he calls, you answer, but you're not rearranging your entire life to fit his convenience. Your time becomes valuable. Your presence becomes earned, not assumed. When a man senses that your world does not revolve around him, something shifts inside him. Curiosity kicks in. He starts wondering what you're doing, who you're with, what has your attention. And here's the key. Curiosity creates pursuit, but overavailability kills it. If he knows you'll always be there, no matter how distant he becomes, there's no reason for him to correct his behavior. Men are wired to pursue what challenges them, not what chases them. The moment you start chasing, the dynamic flips. He becomes the prize, and you become the applicant. That imbalance slowly erodes attraction. But when you match his energy calmly and confidently, you reposition yourself as equal. You're not above him. You're not below him. You're beside him. And equality commands respect. There's also something psychological happening here. When you reduce your energy, you create space. And space allows him to reflect. If you're constantly filling every gap with messages, calls, and reassurance, he never has time to miss you. Absence, when handled correctly, increases appreciation. It reminds him of what your presence adds to his life. But he can't feel that if you're always right there, even when he's pulling away. Matching energy also protects your heart. Instead of pouring into someone who's temporarily withdrawn, you redirect that energy back to yourself. You stay busy, you stay productive, you stay fulfilled, and that fulfillment shows. A woman who is fulfilled without constant validation radiates confidence. And confidence is attractive at any level. If he steps back and you step back too, one of two things will happen. Either he notices the shift and leans back in because he values what you bring, or he continues drifting away. And if he continues drifting, that tells you everything you need to know. You were investing more than he ever intended to. In both outcomes, you gain clarity, and clarity is power. So when he distances himself, don't overreact and don't overcompensate. Adjust, mirror, balance the scales, because when your energy is aligned with his effort, you protect your value and you give him the opportunity to rise or reveal that he never planned to. The third thing you must do when a man distances himself is shift your focus back to yourself. And I don't mean pretend to focus on yourself while secretly checking your phone every 10 minutes. I mean genuinely, intentionally redirect your energy inward. Because the moment a man pulls away, the biggest mistake you can make is making him your full-time job, overthinking him, monitoring him, analyzing him. When you do that, you slowly lose yourself in the process. See, attraction thrives when two whole people come together, not when one person becomes emotionally dependent on the other's attention. The more your happiness depends on his consistency, the more anxious you become when that consistency changes. But when you have your own goals, your own routines, your own passions, his temporary distance doesn't shake your foundation. It may bother you, yes, but it doesn't break you. When he pulls back, that is your signal to level up. Go to the gym, improve your health, work on your career, start that project you've been postponing, reconnect with friends, invest in your spiritual and emotional growth, not to make him jealous, that's small thinking, but to strengthen yourself. Because here's the truth, self-improvement builds confidence, and confidence changes your entire presence. A woman who is constantly improving radiates a different energy. She walks differently. She talks differently. She doesn't beg for attention because she's too busy building a life she's proud of. And when a man sees that you are evolving, that you are progressing with or without him, it forces him to evaluate his position. He begins to ask himself, am I rising to meet her level, or am I falling behind? Let me tell you something about men. We are competitive by nature, not just with other men, but with circumstances. When we see a woman thriving, glowing, progressing, especially when we expected her to be sitting around waiting, it sparks something inside us. It challenges us. But when we see a woman stuck, anxious, and centered entirely on us, the challenge disappears. And without challenge, interest fades. Focusing on yourself also protects your emotional independence. When your day is full, when your mind is engaged, when your life has purpose beyond one person, you don't obsess over delayed texts. You don't interpret silence as rejection. You simply continue living. And that calm continuation sends a powerful message. I value you, but I value myself too. There's something incredibly attractive about a woman who chooses growth over anxiety. Instead of saying, why is he doing this? She says, how can I improve myself during this time? That shift in mindset changes everything. Because now his distance becomes your opportunity. Opportunity to build discipline. Opportunity to strengthen your confidence. Opportunity to detach from emotional dependency. And here's the deeper part. When you focus on yourself, you become less afraid of losing him. Why? because you realize you are the prize too. You recognize that your value does not decrease just because someone else pulls back. You understand that your worth is constant. And when you truly understand that, you stop chasing validation. If he comes back and sees you stronger, happier, and more centered, he will feel the difference immediately. He will notice that your energy has shifted. And energy never lies. But if he doesn't come back, you still win. Because while he was distancing, you were developing. While he was unsure, you were upgrading. So instead of shrinking when he creates space, expand. Instead of worrying, work. Instead of obsessing, improve. Make his distance the reason you elevate, not the reason you deteriorate. Because when you focus on becoming the best version of yourself, you never lose. You either gain him back with renewed respect or you outgrow him entirely. The fourth thing you must understand when a man distances himself is this: don't confront too quickly. Timing is everything. When you feel that shift, the slower replies, the shorter conversations, the reduced effort, your first instinct is to demand answers. You want clarity immediately. You want reassurance immediately. You want to sit him down and say, what's going on? But let me explain something to you. If you confront from emotion instead of observation, you lose leverage. When you react too fast, you're speaking from fear, not facts. And fear clouds judgment. Sometimes a man pulling back for a day or two has nothing to do with losing interest. He could be stressed about work. He could be dealing with family issues. He could simply need mental space. But if you immediately accuse him of ignoring you or losing feelings, you create tension where there might not have been any. Now, instead of solving a problem, you've created one. Observation is power. Instead of confronting immediately, you watch. You pay attention to patterns. One day of distance is a mood. A week of distance is a pattern. Patterns reveal intention. When you allow behavior to repeat itself, you gather information without drama, and information gives you control. Because when you finally decide to speak, you're not speaking from assumption, you're speaking from evidence. There's also something psychological that happens when you don't rush to confront. You create space for him to correct himself. Sometimes people become aware of their own inconsistency when they feel the shift in energy. If you immediately call it out, he may become defensive. But if you step back and let him feel the change in your presence, he might lean back in on his own. And when someone adjusts without being forced, it means more. Now let's talk about how you do confront, because silence forever isn't strength either. The key is calm communication, not accusation, not emotion-filled speeches, not ultimatums driven by panic. You approach the situation with composure. I've noticed we haven't been connecting the same way lately. Is everything okay? That's different from, why are you ignoring me? One invites dialogue. The other invites defense. When you confront calmly and at the right time, you maintain dignity. You show that you are aware, not desperate. You show that you value communication, not chaos. And men respond differently to calm strength than they do to emotional pressure. A man can handle accountability. What he struggles with is emotional overwhelm. If he feels attacked, he shuts down. If he feels respected, he opens up. But here's the deeper truth. Sometimes you don't even need a confrontation. Behavior is communication. If he consistently shows low effort, inconsistency, or emotional absence, that is your answer. You don't need to beg someone to show up. You don't need to convince someone to prioritize you. When effort decreases and stays decreased, that's clarity. And clarity removes confusion. Not confronting too quickly also protects your pride. If you question him at the first sign of change and he gives you a temporary excuse, you might accept crumbs just to feel secure again. But when you wait and observe, you see whether his actions align with his words. Because words are easy. Consistency is proof. Patience in this situation isn't weakness, it's strategy. It allows you to respond instead of react. It allows you to gather truth instead of chasing comfort. And once you have truth, your next move becomes obvious. Either he steps up and restores the connection, or you quietly adjust your investment. So don't rush to fix what you don't fully understand. Don't confront based on feelings alone. Watch, learn, evaluate. And when you do speak, speak from calm confidence. Because a woman who moves with awareness instead of impulse will always stay in control of the outcome. The fifth thing you must do when a man distances himself is protect your dignity at all costs. Dignity is something you don't realize you've lost until you look back and wish you had handled things differently. When emotions are high and fear of losing someone creeps in, it becomes very easy to abandon your standards just to keep the connection alive. You start accepting behavior you once said you would never tolerate. You lower your expectations. You excuse inconsistency. And all of it happens slowly, almost invisibly, because you're operating from attachment instead of self-respect. When a man pulls away, your dignity is tested. The test is simple. Will you overextend to keep him, or will you maintain your value even if it risks losing him? Many people fail this test because they think holding on tighter shows love. But sometimes holding on tighter only shows fear. And fear-based behavior rarely earns respect. Dignity means you do not beg for attention. You do not plead for communication. You do not send emotional paragraphs trying to convince someone to choose you. If someone needs convincing to see your worth, they are not aligned with you. A woman who understands her value knows that attention should be given freely, not negotiated under pressure. The moment you start negotiating for basic effort, you've already compromised your position. There is something incredibly powerful about restraint. When you feel the urge to call him out emotionally, but you choose composure instead, that's dignity. When you feel the urge to send another text after being ignored, but you decide to stop, that's dignity. When you feel hurt, but you don't let that hurt push you into embarrassing behavior, that's strength. And strength leaves a lasting impression. Men notice when access changes. If he was used to unlimited emotional support, constant availability, and instant responses, and suddenly that shifts because you've adjusted your boundaries, he will feel it. But if you continue offering the same level of access despite receiving less effort, he has no incentive to improve. Dignity creates boundaries without drama. It says, I am not upset. I am simply adjusting. Silence, when used with maturity, can be louder than confrontation. Not silent treatment, that's manipulation. But calm withdrawal of over-giving. When you stop over-explaining, stop over-sharing, stop over-initiating, you create space for him to step forward. And if he doesn't step forward, that tells you something important. It tells you he was comfortable receiving without reciprocating. Protecting your dignity also protects your long-term confidence. Because even if the relationship doesn't survive, you will walk away knowing you handled yourself with grace. There is peace in that. There is pride in knowing you didn't lose yourself trying to keep someone else. Regret often doesn't come from losing a person. It comes from losing your self-respect in the process. And here's the truth. People value what they respect. If you allow disrespect, inconsistency, and emotional neglect without consequence, you unintentionally teach someone how to treat you. But when you respond to distance with composure and boundaries, you teach them that your presence is earned. You teach them that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. Dignity doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough not to tolerate behavior that diminishes you. It means you understand that love without respect cannot survive. It means you would rather lose someone than lose your standards. So when he distances himself, don't chase validation. Don't fight for crumbs. Stand firm in who you are. Adjust your energy. Protect your boundaries. And remember this, the right man will never require you to sacrifice your dignity just to keep his attention. The sixth and final thing you must be willing to do when a man distances himself is this: be prepared to let him go. Now, I know that's not easy to hear. Nobody enters a relationship planning for detachment. Nobody invests time, emotion, and energy expecting to walk away. But strength in love is not just about holding on. Sometimes strength is about releasing what is no longer choosing you. Here's the hard truth. If a man can comfortably ignore you, reduce his effort, and create emotional distance without fear of losing you, then he believes you will stay regardless of how little he gives. And when someone believes you will never leave, they often stop trying as hard. Not because they hate you, but because human nature relaxes where there are no consequences. That's why being willing to let go is powerful. It reintroduces consequence. It restores balance. Letting go does not mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself enough to refuse half-hearted love. A relationship should not feel like you are constantly convincing someone to stay connected. You should not feel like you are fighting for basic communication or minimum effort. When love is mutual, effort is mutual. When interest is genuine, consistency follows naturally. A man who truly values you will feel uncomfortable at the thought of losing you. Not threatened in a toxic way, but aware. He will notice your absence. He will feel the shift. And if he truly wants you in his life, he will close the gap. But if he doesn't, that silence is your answer. And sometimes the answer you avoid is the clarity you need. Being willing to let go removes fear from your actions. When you are afraid to lose someone, you tolerate things you shouldn't. You accept excuses. You justify inconsistency. You shrink your standards. But when you accept that you can walk away if necessary, your mindset changes. You stop operating from scarcity. You stop thinking, what if I lose him? And start thinking, what if I lose myself staying here? There is a deep confidence that comes from knowing you are okay alone. Not lonely, but whole. When you are whole, you don't cling to people who are unsure about you. You don't chase clarity from someone who avoids giving it. You don't beg for attention from someone who withholds it. You simply observe, evaluate, and decide whether the situation aligns with your standards. And here's something powerful. When you detach emotionally, even slightly, you see things clearly. You stop romanticizing potential. You stop holding on to who he used to be. You look at who he is right now. And who he is right now is what matters. If right now he is distant, inconsistent, and emotionally unavailable, that is the version you must evaluate, not the version you hope will return. Letting go also creates space for something better. Sometimes we hold on to people not because they are right for us, but because we are afraid of starting over. But staying in a situation where you feel unwanted slowly damages your self-esteem. Walking away may hurt temporarily, but staying where you are undervalued hurts continuously. When you are willing to let him go, you shift the dynamic completely. You are no longer trying to secure his choice. You are evaluating whether he deserves yours. That shift is powerful. It places you back in control of your life and your standards. And if he realizes your absence and steps up with consistency, clarity, and effort, then you can reassess from a position of strength, not desperation. But if he lets you walk away without resistance, then you have saved yourself months or years of emotional confusion. At the end of the day, love should feel mutual, secure, and intentional. If you have to constantly question where you stand, something is misaligned. So be strong enough to release what does not choose you, because the right man will never risk losing a woman who knows her worth.